US President Joe Biden has announced a series of new partnerships with African countries that he touts as crucial for global success. Delegations from 49 countries and the African Union, including 45 African national leaders, are attending the three-day summit, which is the first of its kind since 2014. Mr. Biden says the US seeking partnership to foster dependence and spur shared success and opportunity. His comments come as Washington tries to check expanding Russian and Chinese influence on the continent. Arise correspondent Nkechi Nnanna reports.
U.S. President Joe Biden recommitted the United States to Africa in a keynote address to 49 heads of state, vowing to expand American involvement at a time of intense competition from China, Russia, and other powers. It's an opportunity to make up for lost time and reconnect as Biden lays out a long-term commitment to African leaders. Amongst them is an agreement meant to encourage the formation of a continent-wide free trade zone that has stalled over the last few years.
The United States is signing a historic Memorandum of Understanding with the new African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat. This MOU will unlock new opportunities for trade and investment between our countries and bring Africa and the United States even closer than ever. This is an enormous opportunity for Africa's future, and the United States wants to help make those opportunities real. And with the new MOU, we're doing things correctly, enshrining protection for workers, both across Africa and in the United States, looking out for small and medium-sized entrepreneurs and enterprises to make sure they have a fair shot to compete, lifting up opportunity for women-owned businesses, diaspora-owned businesses, and businesses owned by members of historically underserved communities, and supporting and investing in continent's vibrant and growing urban economies. Together, we want to build a future of opportunity where no one is left behind.
And when it comes to regional trade in the continent, Biden hails the Benin-Niger Regional Transport Compact.
We're investing to facilitate greater regional trade within Africa, including by investing in infrastructure. Today, the Millennium Challenge Corporation signed its first ever Regional Transport Compact with the governments of Benin and Niger. This compact will invest $500 million to build and maintain roads, put in place policies that reduce transportation costs. Since the start of my administration, the MCC has announced new investments of nearly $1.2 billion in Africa. We expect the MCC to commit an additional $2.5 billion across Africa in just the next 3 years, supporting everything from agriculture to transportation to access to renewable energy.
And that's not all. Supporting innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa was not left out as Biden expresses the support from the U.S.
We're continuing to support innovation and entrepreneurship across Africa, investing in Africa's people. Developing human capital alongside physical infrastructure is another core aspect of the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. Today, I'm announcing that the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation is investing nearly $370 million in new projects, $100 million to increase the reliable, clean energy for millions of people in sub-Saharan Africa, $20 million to provide financing for fertilizer to help smallholder farmers, particularly women farmers, increase the yields of their crops, $10 million to support small and medium-sized enterprises that help bring clean drinking water to communities all across the continent.
With the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit, the Biden administration hopes to reassert sway in Africa, a force that the world can no longer afford to ignore. Nkechi, Nnanna, Arise News, Washington, D.C.
Well, for more, let's bring in Nkechi Nnanna, who's live in Washington. Good to see you again, Nkechi. Now, President Biden is seeking a long-term partnership with Africa rooted in good governance, but he's also rolled out America's checkbook. Let's begin with the AFCFTA signing.
Yes, Kenneth, the United States commitment to that project has sort of always been questioned when you put it side by side with the African Growth and Opportunities Act. However, that has now changed with the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which has been highly expected at the summit. Now, this pact could create a free trade market, one of the largest in the world. I mean, with 1.3 billion people and growing, it's a continent-wide market totaling $3.4 trillion, with the potential to lift 30 million people out of extreme poverty, Kenneth. And this new agreement will help unlock more opportunities for trade and investment for the parties involved. And from the start of the summit, like from the first opening plenary, you had Ghana's President Nnanna Akufo-Addo really reiterating that it's time for Africa to replicate the sort of economic development and also the sort of wealth creation model that the European Union has taking, where you see 75% of the trade happening within the EU. And so you know that this implementation of the aftermarket has been delayed because of some issues. You had the COVID-19 pandemic, then you had the lack of agreement of the rules of origin of some of the product lines, and also some countries are not ratifying it. And so when you look at some of the investments that Biden was touting, and when you look at the numbers of what the US government has done in terms of helping close more than 800 trade and investment deals across Africa, totaling billions of dollars, you know that this is one of the top achievements of this summit, Kenneth.
Of course, I know that the president also met on sidelines with the president before he went to view a semi-final match. One of the biggest investments coming in is that from Visa. But what else happened on day 2 of the U.S. Africa Summit, Leaders Summit?
So, Kenneth, basically, day 2 of the US Africa Leaders Summit was focusing more, the whole day really actually was focusing more that increased two-way trade and investment partnership. And you had the US Africa Business Forum, which happened the whole day, where you had CEOs and the private sector leadership from over 300 American and also African companies really coming together with the heads of delegation to sort of catalyze that investment in critical areas, including health, infrastructure, agribusiness, energy, digital, and other sectors. And also, I think this is one of the importance, or one thing that sort of sets aside this summit to other summits, is the involvement, the engagements, the inclusion of private sectors, really. And it's so important because the private sector plays a huge part when it comes to investment and trade in Africa and also in the United States. And one point I'd like to make is that private sectors, especially in the African continent, are sort of in the future, or a sort of more innovative in the creative industries, healthcare, digitization, even more so than the African governments. And so some African governments are really playing catch up when it comes to the private sector. So it's important to have the private sector involvement in this sort of summits. And talking about some sort of more investments that Biden announced, Kenneth, really, I'm sure in the report you were hearing you heard President Joe Biden really doting out billions of dollars. It just reminded me of one of Oprah Winfrey's famous episodes of her syndicate show, where it was like, you get $1 billion, health sector, you get $100 billion, this sector, you get this $1 billion. So it was just a day for the United States departments, agencies across the United States, and also the private sector to explain and highlight some of these investments that are taking place here at the US Africa Leaders Summit. One of them that I'll highlight is the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the MCC, and its partnership with the governments of Benin and Niger at the signing of the first regional compacts, totaling $504 million, with additional contribution as well of $15 million from Benin and Niger. And this compact really is to support regional economic integration, trade, and also cross-border collaboration, Kenneth.
Big things are happening at the end of 2022, aren't they? President Biden also met with President Buhari, Nigeria's president, and 5 other leaders who will hold, whose nations will be holding elections next year. What did he say to them?
Yes, Kenneth, you're right. U.S. president met with some African leaders at the White House, and these are a group of 6 leaders who their country are going to have elections next year. Obviously, like you mentioned, Nigerian's President Muhammadu Buhari, who is ineligible to seek a 3rd term in office come February. You also had President Tshisekedi of the DRC, who came into office in 2019, who really the United States has hailed for agreeing to hold sort of the first peaceful transfer of power and elections in Congo. And you also have Gabon, Liberia, Madagascar, and Sierra Leone. And I think it was important for the United States to really come out and say, look, we're not having this meeting with these leaders because we have an issue with their country. We're having this meeting to sort of discuss, because elections are near, to discuss and push forward our value for democracy and press for free votes, and just have that conversation. And this is one of the things that the Biden administration has said is different from their investment and their interest in Africa when it comes to the other external parties, and just focusing more on Nigeria. We have our elections less than, I think, 80 days away. It's an election that could really strengthen or set back our democracy. And President Buhari has always reiterated the need for that smooth transition. If he doesn't leave anything for Nigerians, that's sort of the legacy that he wants to leave. And I think it's a welcome development to have these nations have that discussion of their renewed value for democracy in the continent.
Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Nkechi and Nnanna, our correspondent in Washington, D.C., attending the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit.